In this episode, surfing legend Mick Fanning is struck on his board by a great white shark during a surfing competition. He tumbles into the water, being dragged downwards by his ankle cord. Over the next horrifying seconds, the crowd on the shore and millions watching at home are left wondering if they have just witnessed the world champion's final moments as he is shielded from view by an enormous wave. Behind the wave, Mick is fighting for his life. This is his story. Click like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Three-time surfing world champion Mick Fanning could have surfed his last wave on the 19th of July, 2015. He was competing in the J-Bay Open, an event on the World Surf League Champion Tour. It took place in Jeffreys Bay on South Africa's Eastern Cape. It's a beautiful location, world famous for its incredible surf and excellent whale watching opportunities. Tourists and locals alike visit the bay to enjoy the water sports and marine wildlife. For Mick, he was competing in the final of the Open. He and competitor Julian Wilson, who was a fellow Australian professional surfer, were in the water together. The event was being broadcast live on the television. Mick's mother was watching her son on the screen from Australia's Gold Coast. Less than 2 minutes into his final run, horrified viewers spotted a dorsal fin break through the surface of the ocean, just feet from where Mick was lying on his board. Initially, Mick was unaware of the imminent danger he was in. He was scouting the waves for his next ride to bring the competition home, looking far out into the ocean. He was counting the seconds until the next barrel he could take to win the competition. He knew what to do. He was used to the pressure. He had been surfing since he was 3 years old. As a surfer, Mick said that you would always think about sharks. You are aware of them. Sometimes you spot a fin a little distance away, and you always hear of attacks, but somehow you never believe it's going to happen to you. And statistically, it is very, very unlikely to happen to any individual. But when we enter the water, we are entering their domain. During the competition, Mick felt good. He was excited by the performance he was giving. He was peaking at the right time, and his body felt good as he rode down the barrels. But this shark came from his side, torpedoing towards the surfer as he bobbed on the surface, lying face down on his board. Just 2 minutes into his final run of the contest, Mick spotted the dorsal fin, maybe a millisecond after the spectators did. It protruded from the water next to him. Immediately, the adrenaline started pumping, and Mick had no time to react. Within a second, the shark had become entangled in his surfboard cord as it came in for a bite. The cord tugged on Mick's ankle. He scrambled about on his board, trying desperately to hold on. He kicked with his legs and pulled with his arms. He needed to stay out of the water. Looking down in the water, Mick could see the pectoral fin just below the surface as the shark began thrashing around. He realized very quickly how bad the situation was. He suddenly panicked, thinking that this was it. His mom was home on the Gold Coast of Australia. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw the shark coming for her son. There was nothing she could do except for stare in horror as the attack unfolded. She thought he was gone. She thought she had witnessed her son's death live on international television, a sight that will continue to haunt her. She had already lost one son, Sean, in a car accident 17 years ago. In those terrifying seconds, she thought that the universe can't be that cruel. She can't possibly lose 2 sons. Then, as Mick was pulled from his board and disappeared underwater, a large wave came sweeping in. It was a huge roller. It blocked everyone's view. Nobody knew what happened to Mick. Nobody knew if they would see him again. When the wave rolled in and dissipated, what would be waiting for them on the other side? Had they just witnessed arguably the best surfer of all time demolished by a great white? But behind that wave, hidden from view, Mick was fighting. He was fighting for his life. The shark had knocked him off his board and into the water. Stunned, Mick looked around, just feet from his board, to see the shark coming back for him again. In the split seconds that followed, the shark rushed past Mick in the water. As it nearly brushed him, Mick punched it as hard as he could on its side, between the dorsal fin and the pectoral fin. The shark broke through the ankle cord, releasing Mick from his surfboard. At that moment, Mick made a dash for it. He couldn't ride a wave in without his board. Instead, he swam as fast as he could, desperately trying to make it to the shore and the waiting crowd. The shark sirens were wailing across the bay. The crowd was in a frenzy, and Mick suddenly stopped. There was a heart-stopping moment when Mick realized he couldn't outswim a shark. He knew if it was coming after him, it would take him from behind. It could be chasing after him right now. He wouldn't be able to react. He wouldn't be able to see its approach. So instead of fleeing, Mick decided to turn and face the predator. At least now he would have a chance of seeing it coming for him. He could see his feet just below the surface, but he could see no further. He knew he had that length of time to react if the shark came at him, just a few feet. He tried to get as high as he could in the water. He needed to give himself the best chance possible of spotting the shark before it took a bite. In those terrifying moments when Mick was treading water, hoping upon hope that the shark had finished with him, he felt alone. Watched by millions around the world and a huge crowd on the beach, he has never felt so alone. But luckily for Mick, help was on its way. His competitor and friend, Julian Wilson, paddled ferociously over to him. But the safety jet skis and boats got there first. They stormed towards Mick, grabbing him and pulling him and Julian out of the water and onto their jet skis, and then into the safety speedboat. Mick was rushed back to shore. The adrenaline that had been surging through Mick now wore off, and when he made it back to dry land and met up with his friends, all with tears in their eyes, the shock of what had just happened began to sink in. It was an emotional end to a long day. The event was called off, and Mick went back to his base to reflect on the events. He fired up the barbecue and sank a few beers with his mates. He and his friends celebrated his survival. It was like a wake for him, but with him there. But it could have been a very different ending. Mick flew back to Australia the next day. He went straight away to visit his mother. It was an emotional reunion. It took him less than a week to get back in the water. He was still shaken from his experience, but he believed that if he didn't get back in the water soon after the attack, that he wasn't ever going to. And surfing had been his life for so long. To give it up after his experience wasn't the ending to his career that he had dreamt of. Ironically and terrifyingly, on his first surf back in the water after the attack, he spotted a fin in the water a short distance away and hurriedly rowed his board back to the beach, where his mother was waiting for him. For a while afterwards, Mick said that he still suffered from nightmares. He says that now, when he enters the water, there is the fear of the unknown. You can't see something like that coming. There is no preparing for such an attack. His mother said that she was anxious but happy for him to return to the water, and Mick said that he'll look over his shoulder more now when he's out there beyond the breakers.